Hello and welcome to North County Roundtable. I'm your host, Kent Davey. Today we will be joined by San Diego County 5th District Supervisor Jim Desmond. The 5th District runs from Oceanside to Octilla Wells and includes Oceanside, San Marcos, Vista, and Escondido. Stay with us for this edition of North County Roundtable. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Kent.
For those of our audience who may not know you well, tell us who you are. Who are you?
I'm a public servant serving the citizens of North County, representing them here with all county matters. The Navy brought me to San Diego County, met my beautiful wife. We've been married for 37 years. We raised our family in San Marcos. And I've gone through different jobs. I have an engineering degree from San Diego State. Also, I was an airline pilot for Delta Airlines. I had a career there for 33 years. I started volunteering in the community, and I started volunteering, at my kids' schools and scouts, and I started a business and then volunteered to be on the city council, ran for city council, and then ran for mayor. I was mayor of San Marcos from 2006 to 2018. And then I ran for county supervisor, and I've been doing this job for 3.5 years, and I enjoy representing North County.
For our viewers, if you were to look back in the way your personality and your history has developed, who are you influenced by? Who's your political model?
I don't know if I have a specific political model, but I try to be, I guess the term is a populist. I work for the people. I try to work for them, and I try to work for the citizens of San Marcos. In the county, I try to work on county issues, things that are local. Streets, roads, infrastructure, public safety. We want parks and trails and, housing, things like that are kind of more of my focus, more of the local focus. So, I don't have any interest in Sacramento or moving on up in office. I like to be grounded here in North County and see what I can get done locally.
Okay. As we talk about what's local, I know that there was redistricting in the past year, and the residents of Carlsbad at least lost your services, and the residents of Escondido picked them up.
Yes.
What else is the impact of that redistricting?
I don't think there's a huge impact in that, who's part of North County and who's not. I mean, Carlsbad, to me, North County is about from the 56 north. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, like you said, I did lose the representation of Carlsbad and also Rancho Santa Fe. But picking up Escondido, I've always, I don't have like personal political boundaries or things like that. Those are just primarily the people who can vote for me. Right. But I look at all of North County, in making decisions and things like that, as what benefits North County and how can we get resources here. If it's good for Carlsbad, it's also good for Oceanside and Vista and surrounding communities.
Did the redistricting change the political atmosphere of the board?
Not necessarily for my district that I'm aware of. I know it did change quite a bit for Tara Lawson-Reamer's district, which is District 3, which is now mostly coastal. So it's like Carlsbad all the way down to Coronado. Mm-hmm. For me, North County is still pretty solid. Previously, I went from Oceanside all the way to Borrego Springs and picked up Ocotillo, but I also have Fallbrook and Valley Center and those types of places. So politically, it didn't really change things. It was pretty much, as far as the demographics are still pretty much the same.
In the news of late, there has been a great deal of controversy and conversation about the placement of sexual predators in our community, particularly over in Borrego Springs with, I believe, Douglas Badger and then Michael Martinez. Can you tell us what's going on about that and what your views are?
I don't think they should be placed in any neighborhood. But what's been going on in the state, these are people that have committed crimes, multiple crimes.
These are violent sexual predators.
Sexually violent predators. There's sexual predators out there, but these are sexually violent predators. These are the worst of the worst. And unfortunately, the state and the state hospitals have been releasing some of these sexually violent predators and then putting them back into our communities. Now, they've done their time, which I respect. But they're not necessarily cured. And somebody who actually has done those crimes, and these are offenders that have done it repeated times. This isn't just a one-time offense. They've usually repeated, I think one of them started in 1959 and went to 1991 in these type of crimes. So it really has a devastating negative effect on neighborhoods. To put a sexually violent predator in your neighborhood, and even if that person is a model citizen from here on out, you've still got that caution, you still got that worry. Are you going to let your kids go out and play? Are you going to go out at night? And are you going to have to put on a disclosure that you've got a sexually violent predator living next to your house, what that might do to your property values?
What does the state use to determine that it is okay to place a person in a particular spot?
I'm not sure what all the parameters are, but the state actually contracts with a company called Liberty, and Liberty is the entity that goes out and finds the houses, and normally they pay multiple times market rate of rent, so it's enticing for landlords, particularly absentee landlords, but they contract with a company to find these particular houses, and unfortunately there's 2 potentially being placed in Borrego Springs within about 30 days of each other.
The Liberty privately owned company, do you know anything about it?
I don't know enough. I don't know if it's privately owned or not.
Okay. Given that this is a persistent and ongoing problem, and probably always will be in our society, what could be done? What should be done with these people?
Well, I think what should be done, they should be isolated from the rest of us. I mean, I think they should stay in a state hospital and stay out of coming back into our communities. If the only place I could think of that would be viable would be potentially, we've got a couple of prisons down in the South Bay area, not to pick on South Bay, but put within the Donovan prison in a parking lot, put a trailer or a couple of trailers or a row of trailers and let these sexually violent predators live in the parking lots in trailers. And that's a place where I think they could be safely monitored. Borrego Springs is not a good place.
Has that suggestion been communicated to either state legislators or to the state administrators?
Yeah, actually a judge did this for a period of time, I think it was 2007, where they didn't have a place for a sexually violent predator to go, so they temporarily used a prison parking lot and with a trailer in it, and that's where the sexually violent predator lived.
And the state's response to the suggestion has been what?
Has been unmoving, primarily because Liberty, who they contract with, has a good track record of not having these people that have been released commit any further crimes. But like I said, even if they never committed another crime, just knowing that you've got somebody like that next door to you or in your neighborhood or 3 doors down is definitely going to negatively impact the community, whether they commit another crime or not.
Do you know whether or not any of in a case where somebody's been placed, a neighbor whose property values have just fallen through the floor, have brought any litigation?
I cannot specifically speak to that. However, I do know one of these, I think it was Mr. Badger, was actually placed out in Boulevard, in another unincorporated area in East County. It was placed in Boulevard, and he violated the terms of his contract. Or the terms of his release. They're released conditionally. They have a GPS monitor on them. Apparently this guy left the GPS area maybe once or twice, but he actually was taken back and back to a state hospital for a period of time. I think it's been about a couple of years, and now he's back to be placed again in Borrego Springs potentially. And what happened, San Diego County really didn't come, wake up to this until there was a potential placement in Rancho Bernardo. Unfortunately, I think we've got 8 or so current sexually violent predators living in mostly the unincorporated areas in Hamul and Valley Center and other areas of the county. And when they went to an more urban area, then the county said, "No way, we're not going to have any of this anymore." And I actually put forward an agenda item last October, which the board unanimously supported, was that we, the county, were no longer going to approve or accept any sexually violent predators here in San Diego County unless we get a seat at the table and we get veto power over that particular placement. We sent a letter to the Department of State Hospitals. We never got a response, and the fact that they're trying to place 2 more sexually violent predators in San Diego County over our opposition. I guess that's our response.
Does that put a particular burden on the Sheriff's Department to keep an eye on these folks in particular?
Well, yeah, it definitely, law enforcement is much more aware, and they have to keep an eye. Also, Liberty actually has a company that Liberty itself also monitors through the ankle-bracelet or GPS tracking the whereabouts of the person. The citizens in the county have very little knowledge about what are the parameters. Can this guy go to the grocery store? Can they go to an entertainment venue? Can they go out and about it? Can they go to a neighborhood park? Those particulars are very, very quiet, and we never really hear what those parameters are. But Liberty primarily monitors the actions and monitors the whereabouts of the sexually violent predator, and they're contracted by the state.
Right. Changing the topic somewhat, you guys at the Board of Supervisors recently passed a $7.35 billion budget, which seems like an awful lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
It represents a 1.5% year-over-year increase, as I understand, and anticipates about 1,000 new employees for the county. Where are those 1,000 employees going to go?
Well, we recently, from the last election, we've got a new boards of supervisors with new priorities, and a lot of them are going to be going to social services. There's a few new departments that were created. Actually, there's about 8 or 9 departments. I couldn't name them all for you right now, but the Department of Labor is one that we created. Another department for helping refugees and immigrants coming across the border. A diversion and inclusion department as well. And so those types of more social services were departments were created, and that's where a lot of the new employees will be going to.
Do you know if any of the new employees will be headed towards juvenile probation? I have been told, and this is off kind of in background, been told that juvenile probation has lost staff year over year over year over year, and that they're way down and have staffing problems.
Well, one of the good things is we have fewer people in juvenile hall, and our juvenile hall numbers have actually come down. So there has been some, I guess, attrition and loss of probation officers. But I got to tell you, public safety wide at the county, we're having very difficult problems finding people to fill positions. On our sheriff's department, I know we have a few hundred people short on our sheriff's department. And that's just not the people out on the roads, right. But this is also our court system and our jails and things like that. We've had a hard time, and the probation department as well, and the public defenders. We've had a hard time recruiting people in these times and these efforts, particularly in the defund the police type of movement and effort, attracting people and hiring people in law enforcement and public safety.
I realize most of those people are going to be under a contract situation with unions, but has that created wage pressure up to try and find ways to attract people?
Absolutely, and myself and Supervisor Anderson put forward a board letter or an agenda item recently on trying to attract more people. What can we do? And so we've asked staff, what can we do to attract more people into public safety? And that includes salaries, that includes wages, that includes benefits, that includes what enticements do we need? Now, they haven't come back with a full package yet, but we're competing with a lot of other agencies throughout the state and this have the same problem. So we're trying to figure out what it is we can do. One of the things I suggested is let's ask our current law enforcement, the people that have been there, what is it that drove them or enticed them to that particular job? Mm-hmm. What is it that keeps them going, keeps them motivated? Those types of things, and I think we need to maybe do a little bit more engagement with the actual boots on the ground right now.
Do you know if there was any increase in the rate of retirement?
Absolutely.
Post some of the riots and protests over the last 2 years?
Absolutely, and there still is today. And I can't tell you the exact numbers, I don't have them all in my head, but it's been a dramatic increase in the number of retirements. And it's a lot of it has to do with not so much our district attorney, who's Summer Steffen, who does a great job, but throughout the state, in that law enforcement's frustrated. And particularly we had Prop 47, and that made a lot of the felony crimes, like shoplifting, I guess multiple times of shoplifting, made them into misdemeanors. As long as if you don't physically cause any harm or violence to another individual, you're potentially let go that next day or same day. If you steal a car and you didn't really cause any violence or didn't hurt anybody, you can be let out. You're not going to jail. So that's sort of the line, or you're not going to be held that long. So there's a lot of frustration, I think, within the policing departments as to, hey, I did my job, I caught this bad guy, I did all the paperwork, and hopefully we can get him off the streets, and then they're out that afternoon.
Yeah. A tangential law enforcement problem and societal problem generally is the flood of fentanyl across the border into our community. Also methamphetamine. I saw a huge seizure recently. What do you think we can do about this?
Well, with COVID and the rise in mental health and issues, we've got a lot of people coping with life, with drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of are homeless that unfortunately are coping with life with drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of anxiety out there. There's been a lot of, I guess, people with COVID, a lot more isolation. Recently, and unfortunately, we're not dealing with it in healthy ways. And fentanyl is one of the, is a poison. Actually, my office, we did a big push on trying to raise fentanyl awareness, and I've talked to many families now that have told me they've lost a child. They've lost, it's the #1 killer for 18 to 45-year-olds, not in San Diego County and in the country, and in San Diego County itself, our numbers have doubled almost since like 2019, where we had 150 people died of fentanyl overdose. Now last year in 2021, we were over 850. And unfortunately, our numbers are still trending in the wrong direction.
As I understand, at least historically, there was an arc between legal opioid use, prescription opioid use, forming an addiction that then leads somebody onto the street with drugs that are laced with fentanyl and become very dangerous.
Yes, and a lot of the younger kids are getting fentanyl unknowingly is through fake prescription drugs. And you can order, if you want to get an Adderall or some of these other drugs, that kind of recreational type drugs that you might find in your parents' medicine cabinet or something like that. You can order it online. Unfortunately, there's apps where you can order. You don't even have to put in, I'd like an Adderall delivered to my house. There's emojis that people use to order these types of drugs online, and they think they're getting a prescription drug. It looks just like a prescription drug, but they're laced with fentanyl. And they're laced with fentanyl primarily because you get it's a higher high than most any other drug. But if you get too much of it, and they estimate 40% of the illegal or fake prescription drugs that come into this country and the kids take, 40% of them have a lethal dose that can kill you. And so we've been seeing young people thinking they're taking a recreational drug, or they get it from a friend. They get it from a friend, and their friend says, "Hey, I got this," and they trust their friend. And somebody gave me the explanation of like a chocolate chip cookie. When they mix these batches of fake prescription drugs and then sell them, let's say you and I split a cookie, and your cookie's got 3 chocolate chips and mine's got 8. And that could be, I could have the killer side of that pill if it's got 8 milligrams of fentanyl in it, and yours only has 3. Maybe you live and I die. And so it's got to be looked at as a poison, not a drug, and know that what the message we're trying to get out to kids and to parents is one pill can kill. One pill can kill. And I did a webinar with people from Homeland Security, from the DEA, from FBI and other agencies, and people that are confiscating this at the border, of what parents should know about fentanyl. So we have that, and it's gotten quite a few views and looks. But fentanyl is poison. One pill can kill.
Do you think that the three-letter agencies of the federal government are doing enough to stop this?
I think they're doing their best that they can to stop this. You know, if the whole another issue is our wide open borders, and a lot of it is coming. It's fentanyl. I understand the chain. It's created in China. It's manufactured in Mexico, and it comes across our borders. And unfortunately, you know, you kind of point your finger at other countries. We're the ones that are taking it. We're the ones demanding this. We're the demand.
Market.
They're the supply. So we've got to change some things about mental health and about attitudes about taking drugs in this country.
A related law enforcement problem would be sex trafficking.
Oh, absolutely,
and,
yeah.
I know San Diego has been a hotbed in the past. Is it still, and are things any better?
You know, there's a lot more effort being directed towards sex trafficking and human trafficking. I know our district attorney, Summer Steffen, this is one of her big hot topics. We've created spaces now for people to feel comfortable about coming in and talking about it. There's just opened up in North County in San Marcos, One Safe Place. And this is a place where people can come if they're victims of sex trafficking or domestic violent victims. They can come to this One Safe Place in San Marcos and get all the resources that they need to hopefully get them out of that predicament as well. So there's been a lot more emphasis on social media, particularly with the human trafficking in the county. And unfortunately, because you know we share a border with Mexico, there's a lot more people have been brought into this country, and their fare is the sex trafficking industry, and it's a sad state.
Do we get sufficient cooperation from Mexican authorities on trying to stop it on their end?
I'm not part of those conversations, so I really couldn't tell you. I would imagine that they don't want their people coming over here and being sex trafficked either. So I think there's an agreement on that, and I know there's much more awareness and much more is being done here in San Diego County. Unfortunately, we've got the biggest part of the problem, but I also think we got a very strong focus from our district attorney, Summer Steffen.
In the news lately, or perhaps all the time, or frequently, are just horrific gun-related killings. Some people are arguing that liability for gun manufacturers ought to be wide open as a way to try and stop the proliferation of guns. I know you have talked about it. Can you talk about your views on this?
Well, I don't know that we're going to be able to confiscate all the guns that are out there. You know, there's a lot of California already has a ban on assault rifles, and California already has a ban on automatic weapons, and we have a ban on ghost guns. We've got lots of laws in place, and I think, unfortunately, with what I've seen and I think the rest of us have all seen as well, of these very horrific gun violent acts and events are young males. Young males with mental health issues, and that need to be addressed, need to be pointed out. I'm in favor of background checks, and I think those that have mental health issues or have a history or signs or things like that, like a lot of these, from Uvalde and Columbine to you name it, most of these young men are acting out in violent ways that I think we could do a lot more for mental health, which I've done a lot in North County, and we're trying to do that. But I think nationwide, we've really got to take a look at ourselves and see why are our young men committing these types of crimes, and what can we do to prevent that?
With regard to mental health, with regard to drug addiction, there are some people who suggest those are two of the major components of homelessness in our region or in our society. There are some others that would rather point at the housing prices and affordability. The federal government's priority is to say housing first, regardless of addiction issues or other problems. There are other people like Solutions for Change in Vista that say, no, we're going to we'll eschew the federal dollars, we're going to run a program that says you can't have alcohol or addiction problems in our facility. What do you think we can do?
Well, I think we found out there's no magic bullet, and there's many tools in the toolbox. And unfortunately, it's hard to even go to the grocery store without coming across a person that is homeless. And a lot of the people that are still out there homeless on the streets now are ones that are refusing help. We've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people. If somebody's homeless and they want help and they want a shelter and they would need help with their rent or they need services, we will do that and can do that and have done it for many people. We've rented hotel rooms. If you want help and you're willing to get that help, we have had thousands of successes. But what we still see out on the street now are the people that don't want help. They don't want to live by any rules. They don't want it. And unfortunately, with the laws that we have in the state, you can't arrest somebody for being homeless. And now using drugs is a misdemeanor, and we filled up our jails already with people using drugs and alcohol, and that really didn't fix anything. So now drug usage is no longer as criminal of an offense or a jail-worthy offense. And so the people that we have, most of the people that are out there are homeless don't want help. And housing first, as you mentioned, to me, I'm not an advocate of housing first, but it is a tool in the toolbox. Basically, it says get them into housing, and that's the solution. Okay, that's good, but housing first allows them to continue to use drugs and alcohol. So they're not really, in my opinion, being helped if they continue to use it. And is that the best use of taxpayer dollars? Just getting someone into a house who's probably, or an apartment or whatever it may be, while they're still using. Maybe the first 30 days or something like that. It's a tool in the toolbox, but it's not the only tool. And unfortunately, that's how it's being presented. As you mentioned, solutions for change. They don't allow drug or alcohol use to be in their program. And Mr. Megerson has done a fantastic job and has had a lot of successes out of solutions for change. And so, what I've done in North County is focus more on the mental health portion of it in North County. When I got elected 3.5 years ago, Tri-City Hospital had just suspended their psychiatric beds and also a crisis stabilization unit. Our law enforcement officers, when they had a 5150, which is basically they have to take somebody off the streets because they're a hazard to themselves and other people, they're having a psychotic episode or whatever it may be. And so North County, we used to have to take people all the way down to Rosecrans. Right. And then the officers would have to stay with the patient until they were handed off, which sometimes took 3 or 4 hours. Escondido, Palomar Hospital, was an option, but it would fill up so quickly that, so it took a lot of our law enforcement officers off the streets by having to take people down for several hours to a crisis stabilization unit. So in my first 6 months in office, I worked very hard, and I worked with Tri-City Hospital, I worked with Palomar Hospital, and also the City Council and Mayor of Vista, and trying to get money to reopen psychiatric beds at Tri-City Hospital. I got $16 million. And now the price tag's up to $20 million. They're just about now to break ground. It's just taken a lot of permitting and dealing with the state hospital associate system and everything else. So the county is going to be paying for and building a 16-bed building on the Tri-City Hospital site with 16 psychiatric hospital beds. So that'll add more to the number of beds in North County. They also have beds at Palomar Hospital. But also what we pushed for is a crisis stabilization unit. And we have 3 of them now opened in North County along the 78. Crisis stabilization is basically an ER for people with mental health issues. When I was mayor of San Marcos, I had families that I knew would say, hey, we got a son that's schizophrenic or has mental health issues. Where do we go? An ER at a hospital is not the place to go. So we had very few resources. So a crisis stabilization unit is basically a place where families and law enforcement can take someone and get the resources they need, They can be held for up to 24 hours. They can get them on medication. They can try to find a place if they're homeless, a shelter or a place for them to go, get them into services and into programs of hopefully helping that mental health issue. So we got the money for the psychiatric hospital beds, and just last fall we opened up the Vista Crisis Stabilization Unit, and also we opened up one up in Oceanside, right here at the Live Well Center off of Mission and Barnes. And then we put money in the Palomar Hospital one. So now we have 3 crisis stabilization units that can be used by families. Like I said, it's not just law enforcement. And they can take a loved one there to get help. In my office, we're going to be pushing out other avenues. If somebody's not in crisis, but a family just wants to know where to get that help, and we're trying to get more information out to people so they have a place to turn and where to go to, because the ER is not the place to go. If you were a victim of domestic violence, they used to have to go to the sheriff or the police. Then they'd have to go get a restraining order to an attorney. Then they'd have to go get a medical exam. Then they'd have to go try to find some place to go. In one safe place, they have all of those services under one roof in San Marcos. So if you're, and this is even for victims of sex trafficking, this is a place where they can go and they can get the help they need. And same thing even for foster kids and things like that, who just don't know where to go or have a place to turn.
Sandag has a relatively new transportation plan, I think as of December or something like that. Tell me what you think about that plan.
I do not like their plan. North County's getting the short end of that stick.
Hasn't North County gotten the short end of the stick over and over again?
We are tired of that short stick, and we need a better transportation plan.
Tell us what's wrong with this one.
Okay, what is wrong with this one is we in North County were promised in the last plan that we were going to get 2 HOV lanes in each direction on the 78.
That's right.
We are not getting those, and yet we are continuing to pay for that until 2048. And now they're coming up with a new plan that doesn't include those HOV lanes that we were promised, but we are still going to be paying for it, and now they want us to, they're coming back to us with their hands open saying, we want more money for a different plan, even though they haven't fulfilled the promises of the last one.
Is the I-578 intersection ever going to be fixed?
Probably not until 2030 time frame will that ever be fixed. But it was part of the solution with the HOV lanes connecting from the I-15 all the way to the I-5, and then when that connection happens, that's when they would do the HOV or fix that interchange right now. Right now you got 2 HOV lanes coming up the I-5. Right. You're paying for 4. So there were supposed to be 4 HOV lanes coming up the I-5, and then that interchange was going to be redone when the HOV lanes came from the 15 across the 78 and up the 5, and then meet at that I-5 and 78 interchange, and then fix that interchange at that time.
Is there anything can be done?
Well, we could ask for a new plan that includes more of a regional aspect or a regional approach, because currently, the current plan actually has in it, no footprint of any freeway shall be expanded. So in other words, this is all almost 99% transportation, which is buses and rail and things like that, and very little for roads. So no freeway can be expanded anywhere. And we all have different needs. So transportation, transit with buses and trains works fine, downtown San Diego, places like that. Mm-hmm. We've got the Sprinter, we got the Coaster, those could be double track, those could be enhanced, but we also need roads and infrastructure up here on the 78. So right now this regional plan is not regional at all. It basically shortchanges the unincorporated areas, it shortchanges North County and East County.
Well, I hope you can do something about it.
Well, I'm going to work on that as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking with us today, and I'm sure we'll have more to say in the future.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for watching Journalist Roundtable. I'm Kent Davey. I want to thank Supervisor Jim Desmond.
KOCT, the voice of North County.